I wanted to ask you now, you were an advisor to Prime Minister Albin Kurti in his government for communities. And I guess my first question is, you have been very active, an activist, you are an activist. And how was that transition to politics? Because I see activism, you follow your heart in a lot of ways, it's driven by your passion, but politics is a lot more rigid. There are protocols, there are processes, there are rules. You have to sort of think before you act. It is different in a way. Well, maybe sometimes the motivations are the same and the end goal is perhaps the same. How you go about it is quite different. How was that transition for you from activism to politics?
Yeah, I think I never probably fully made the transition for good and for bad, because I've never been interested in politics, not in the UK and not in Kosovo. I've never been a member of any party. I'm not a member of Vetvendosia. And so when I got the call saying that the Prime Minister wanted to meet with me, I really genuinely couldn't think why he might want to meet with me. And in fact, I've never told him this, but I assumed that maybe it was to do with my writing. I thought maybe he wanted me to write a book, to write, an article or something. So it was a complete shock when I went to meet him and he said that he'd like me to be his advisor. And, I said to him, but I'm not interested in politics. This is not, I'd have to give up I'd have to give up the work with the Ideas Partnership so as not to have a conflict of interest. And he persuaded me, by saying, well, what you've done in 3 municipalities, you could now do across the country, and he presented it, I suppose, probably because of his activist background, and he comes from a street movement that went into politics. I think that's what persuaded me, and I don't think I would have been able to do it with any other politician, because I think he does still think like someone who cares about social change, and so in that sense we had a similar mentality, and he gave me that freedom to do. I made sure I spent a lot of my time in the field, at least once a week, but usually twice or 3 times a week. I was out with an NGO who was working with non-majority communities, and I was visiting the areas where the minority communities lived. And that was really important to me, that I could be, because of course I wasn't from a minority community, and so I really didn't want this to be about my voice being heard. It had to be about me amplifying the voices of people from the community, or building bridges so that people could hear. They could hear the voice of the Prime Minister and he could hear from them. So I suppose a lot of my work was about setting up meetings and events and activities, whether for him in the field or for people coming in to have policy discussions with decision makers in the government. And so I loved that. I mean, it was a real treat to be able to do those things. And I think I didn't really become a proper politician in the ways that you're talking about. I think in a way I just continued feeling like an activist, but with that as my goal.
Would you ever go back to it?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm loving that it's only been 2 months, but having some time to focus on my book has been just felt really liberating. I've been able to go back to volunteering with the Ideas Partnership, which feels wonderful.
Yes.
I still have one role in the government. I chair the Diploma Verification Commission, which is a mechanism to enable the Serbs or those who've studied in Serbian language in Kosovo to get their diplomas verified so they can apply for jobs in the institutions, which I feel is a really important peace building process. And so I really wanted to make sure that continued without a bump. And I'm also able to be doing a bit more on the environment, which has always been a passion of mine and something that I could do much less on while I was in government working on non-majority communities. So I suppose if there was an opportunity to continue any of those passions through politics, maybe one day, but I'm enjoying myself at the moment.
And I've gone completely off script, but I'm curious. I've met him once, and he in an informal setting, and he took me really by surprise with his sense of humor. Like, he was like, not teasing me, but like playing jokes with me, and it really caught me off guard, which was great, because I always admired him. I admired like from his activism roots, and he seems very tough and very principled, and he doesn't want to back down, and I like this, and I have to ask, what's he like as a boss?
He's very inspiring. I mean, and as you say, he's also great company, and that really helps. But I think his superpower, and I don't mean when he's been talking to me so much, but when I've had the chance to be in meetings with him and others, his superpower is his listening. You know, he is an amazing listener, and for someone who's a Balkan politician man, I just think the fact that, you know, long meetings go without him actually saying almost anything, because he is just getting the other person to explain what the problem is, how they're feeling, where the issues are. I mean, that's just really smart, whether as a prime minister or as in any other field, just to be able to listen. And I really had to learn that from him. I'm not instinctively a good listener, and there were so many opportunities where we were with people, and I was the one going, oh, but you know, wanting to kind of get in. Well, that's not true, or we're doing this, and he was just like, you know, listening and taking it in. And then, of course, he'd respond, and he'd be in so much better a position to respond when he had all of the information about how the other person was feeling or what their issues were. So I definitely learned a lot from that, and, you know, benefited a lot from that in having him as a boss.
And why did you end your position? You left. What triggered that?
There wasn't really a trigger, but it was just the sense of all the things that I've mentioned, of just wanting to move things that I'd had to put on hold for 3.5 years.